Ole Munch was definitely a standout character in the 5th season of Fargo, fully deserving the limelight of the closing shot. However, even though Ole went into his past and history in the final 20 minutes, there was still so much mystery to the character. I'll try and put it in the words of Ole. A man cannot be satisfied after watching the show without truly knowing who it was that was in front of him. So I thought I'd take a deep dive into the character, establish his identity, and try to answer if he was actually hundreds of years old. So let's get into it. Here is Fargo Season 5, Ole Munch Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Who was Ole Munch? Ole Munch was the kidnapper that was hired by Roy Tillman to connect his wife Nadine, who was now living her life as Dorothy after escaping Roy's ranch and his abusive ways several years ago. It seems like Ole was definitely inspired by Gaear in the movie. He was European, he was big, he was a man of few select words, and he mirrored Gaear's actions on a countless number of occasions, such as the scene with the axe and also when he took Dorothy from her home, just like Gaear did with Jean. Ole was a man that we never truly understood the beliefs of, but what we did know is that they were relatively simple. Don't cross him and you won't be crossed. He believed that debts needed to be repaid, and a pound of flesh that was taken required a pound of flesh in return. Munch was seen quoting the Bible when he had Gaear held hostage. He said, as the Bible says, what is taken must be given, this for that, an eye for an eye. So he was familiar with the Bible, but I wouldn't presume that he practiced any form of Christianity, just due to the way that he acted. It seemed as though Ole took no pleasure in anything. He wasn't interested in drugs, weapons, women, nothing at all, as he was offered all of them at one point and he didn't even respond, showing that it didn't pique his interest in the slightest. The only thing that he seemed to care about in the slightest was money. One would assume that there was no joy in Ole's life because, according to his own words, his life was full of sin. The sin he believed that he took on when he partook in the ritualistic act of sin eating. This is where the more interesting side to the character came into place. Early on in the season, we saw that there was an individual in Wales in 1522 that looked exactly like Ole Munch, and we were made to believe that it was him. This is where the sin eating occurred. Sin eating is a practice where people that were considered poor were paid a small amount to eat a meal over the body of the dead with the intention of taking on their sin before they passed into the afterlife, ridding them of all of their wrongdoings whilst on earth, meaning that the person who ate the sins would hold them for the rest of their days and be stuck with a life of shame. This is something that Ole believed he had carried with him since then, several hundred years ago, as he said that since that day he wasn't able to sleep, grow old, die, or dream, trapping him into a life that was as black as sin itself with no joy, hence why Ole acted the way that he did. When Munch wasn't paid by Tillman for the taking of Dorothy, we saw that he went on to slaughter some of Roy's henchmen, whilst leaving messages demanding that he got paid. This was something which connected to the core theme of the story of debts needing to be repaid and the rich taking advantage of those who were less fortunate than them. Munch knew what it was like to be on the other side of the fence, due to the way that he lived in the 16th century. He was poor and, in his own words, was frightened, would barely eat, and when he would, it would only be the fleas off of a rat's back. He lived like this whilst the rich dined and had full bellies, and would take advantage of those that were less fortunate. And him not getting paid by Roy was something which I feel took his mind back to the way that he was all of those years ago, when he was being taken advantage of by the rich. Hence his motivation for wanting payment and for the debts to be repaid. During the finale, there was an interesting line that Ole said which tied into just how old he could potentially be. He said how he arrived in the United States by longboat. There were 36 men, and when he arrived, he was first in a forest and then on grassland. He also spoke about the fact that he arrived during the time of the Arapaho, the Cree, and the Tonkawa, all North American native tribes. However, he said that he also saw the time of the cannon and the musket. This could be talking about when it was invented, or it could be talking about the taking of the land. He also said how he spoke to nobody for over a century. This threw everything that we thought about Ole Munch into question about just how old he was. We were led to believe that his immortality essentially began in the 1500s, but it seems as though it could date back a lot further than that. With the incorporation of the longboat and him potentially being around before the cannon and musket, this would date him back to around the 12th century. So it is interesting to wonder just how old Ole Munch actually is. But I think the true nature of it is that we won't actually know when, where, and how Ole Munch came to be, and if he is truly as old as what he says he is, or if it connects to my next point, which is Ole Munch mentally ill? One possibility that I never really thought about until I saw somebody say it in the comments is that in a world where everything was pretty normal in Season 5 of Fargo, and there weren't really any supernatural entities that were present, could Munch just be thinking that he has this history to him that he's conjured up inside of his head? And could he believe that he's this person that is hundreds of years old, maybe even older? He could be suffering from delusional grandeur. This is when you believe to be something that you're not, or somebody that you're not, or he could have schizophrenia. We don't know anything about Ole's birth date, his age, where he came from, or his specific birthplace. He speaks in a way that feels severely outdated. He covered himself in blood after killing an animal, killed several people, and didn't even think about it in the slightest. Plus, he also broke into Roy Tillman's house, and above his children's bed whilst they were sleeping there, he painted a symbol in blood. It's definitely safe to say that there could be something up with him, and he does have some kind of mental illness. He's not the sanest person in the slightest, and he had an ominous dark edge. Let's also remember as well, if Munch had been alive for hundreds of years, you would have imagined that he would have moved with the times and not still been stuck how he was several hundred years ago. So there's definitely a case for Ole Munch being a mentally unstable person, and actually just being the age that he looks. So which one is he? I think the beauty of the character is, we'll never truly know the answer. The actor himself doesn't even know what to believe, as he mentioned in an interview that he interpreted the flashback from hundreds of years ago to be either Munch himself or an ancestor. So if it is an ancestor, then the sins could have been passed down through generations to Munch. Or if it is Munch, it could just be a delusional vision that he had. Or it could be real, and Munch is the oldest person on the planet, so there's a lot of complexities to the true identity of the character. If it is eventually revealed that he's a mentally unstable person, then I wouldn't be surprised. But I kind of like the idea that Ole Munch is this person that has seen sin and the atrocities that people have committed over time. And that's why he has the personality that he has. Because he knows how dark the world can be, and he's been on the suffering side of it. It adds a more interesting edge to the show and a side that it's relatively alien to it. Ole Munch had some classic lines in this season. He was a fantastic character to watch, and despite not being a hero, there was some kind of heroic edge to the character. What started as a man that went on to kidnap Dorothy in her own home, concluded with him breaking bread around the table with her, him washing his hands of all of the sin that he once had, and him being free. It was a beautiful way to round off the character while still leaving that ominous nature about him there. So, there you have it. Fargo Season 5, Ole Munch Explained. If you want to see more videos on Fargo Season 5, then click on the card in the top corner. Or if you'd like to see a breakdown of the 1996 Coen Brothers movie, then that's on my channel. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. Do you think Ole was actually hundreds of years old? Leave a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.